They said it will never catch on. But look at us now. The world has changed. And so has business. Australia's leading businesses have already caught on by making the switch to social enterprise. Social enterprises are business that exist for good. There are thousands of them across Australia in every industry. They solve environmental issues, provide community services, and create jobs for the most marginalised. Buying from them is how you can lead the charge in business for good. Don't get left behind. Join the switch to good today. Certify as a business for good.
Wamanjenka, everyone. Welcome. Great to have you all at this session today. My name's Tara. I'm the new CEO at Social Traders. I just want to kick off our session by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands where we're meeting today. I'm joining everyone from Wurundjeri country and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledging that everyone here is probably coming from different places and different Aboriginal lands. And it'd be great to see in the chat if you just want to pop up and say hello and say where you're joining us from today, which Aboriginal lands you're on. It would be great to see some of the diversity we've got in the people in the room. So that little video to kick us off was just to set the scene for today's conversation, which is all about the pioneering work that's happening in the social procurement space. And what we're seeing at Social Traders is that right around the country, more and more businesses and governments are starting to make that switch to their spending with social enterprises. And by doing that, they're trailblazing a completely new way of thinking about procurement. And that's helping build a fairer and more equitable Australia. And that is something that's worth talking about. And that's why we're here today. So there's a few parts to our session that we're going to run through. I'm going to kick off by giving an overview of what's happening in the social procurement space nationally and share a sneak peek of some of our new stats on social enterprises as a collective sector and what that looks like. Then Beck, who's here with us, give a little wave, Beck, for those who can see her, our head of social procurement services. She'll be sharing some insights on best practice in social procurement and practical tips for social procurement strategies and how you can start to embed that within your social procurement function. And Beck's also going to talk us through an overview of our award winners from this year, our Game Changer Awards that celebrated partnerships between business and government members of Social Traders and the social enterprises that they're working with. So she'll share some of those stories and little insights from those. And then the main part of our session is with two special guests who are the national winners of the Social Traders Awards for 2022. I'll introduce them a little bit later. And that's going to be a Q&A where we can get into some deeper dive around why did they win and what is it about this partnership in particular that's unique and special and what can we learn from it. So we want this to be a really interactive session. So we're going to open the floor up to questions from all of you to ask our panel. And also it's a chance, if you'd like to share some of your own insights or learnings about social procurement that you think the rest of the group could benefit from as well. But first up, what we'll do is I'll give a quick overview of Social Traders for those in the room that might not be familiar with us. And then I'll talk a little bit about what's happening from a national perspective. So Social Traders exists to build a thriving social enterprise sector. And we've been doing that since 2008 as a social enterprise intermediary. And we do that because we believe that social enterprises and the way that they blend mission and money in their business model are the business models of the future. And that's what's going to help us create a fairer and more equitable Australia, which is our vision. And we've supported the social enterprise sector in lots of different ways since 2008, but it was back in 2017 where we went and asked the sector, what is it that you really need most from us? What's the biggest difference we can make for you? And social enterprises told us it was about contracts, it was about customers, it was about access to markets. And so that's where we switched our model to focus in on social enterprise procurement. And so there's three things that we do today. First of all, we work with social enterprises. We certify them against 3 criteria, and then we provide advisory and support services to help them win work from business and government members. The second thing we do is we work with the business and government members as well. So we provide a range of training, advice, and support services about how to build social enterprises into supply chains and work through some of that internal change management process. And then we work with government, and that's around advocacy for social procurement policy, because we know that's a really big driver of social procurement activity across the country, and also working with government to spend with social enterprises themselves through their own procurement activity. And what sits at the heart of all of that across all 3 areas is facilitating connections. So we're a connector, we're a broker. So we're here to connect social enterprises with business, with government, to help government create the policies that supports the whole sector to grow, and make sure all of those things are adding up and working well together as a social procurement ecosystem. And what's really exciting is that since we started work in the social enterprise procurement space, we've seen some really, really exciting growth. So we'll take you through some of these stats at a high level that just show some of these trends. So what we can see on the left-hand side here, this chart shows the year-on-year growth we've had since FY18 through to FY21. In the blue bar here, we can see this is the number of business and government members that are signing up with social traders, and that's a 58% average annual growth rate year on year. So continuing more and more continuing to jump on board with this and catch on and catch up to this trend. The yellow bar here shows the number of social enterprises that are getting certified with social traders. And again, that's a really nice growth rate we're seeing there of 29% average annual growth. But the really exciting part of this chart is that orange bar, or the red bar, depending on how you see it, is the spend that happens between the business and government members and the certified social enterprises. So that's also tracking up year on year, and that's the largest average annual growth rate we're seeing across those 3 stats. 67% average annual growth every year of business and government spending with certified social enterprises. So that's hugely exciting. But the reason that matters, if we jump to the next slide, is because of the impact that that creates. So that spend over those 4 years is a total of $393 million being spent with certified social enterprises. So getting up towards the $500 million mark. We're not quite there, but I feel like that's a good start. So I'm going to throw that out there anyway, on the way towards that. And that spend, because of the way that we track the impact at Social Traders, we've got an impact management and measurement team here. We know what kind of impact that creates as a flow on through the social enterprises into the communities that they work with. So we know that from that spend, there's been 550 plus thousand hours of training delivered to beneficiary groups. There's been 2,773 jobs supported through that spend. There's been over 20 million invested in community services that are more affordable and more accessible to beneficiary groups. Over 6 million in donations to charitable causes, and over 8,000 tonnes of waste diverted from landfill. So that's the impact that can be created when you simply switch your spend. So this is operational spending that businesses are spending anyway, that governments are spending anyway. And when you think about social procurement differently and think about your supply chain differently and engage with social enterprises, you get all of these additional impacts. It's a way to create impact with very little change in terms of what you're already doing within the business. That's super exciting to see. And on the next slide, we've also released some new data, or it's about to come out in a couple of weeks in full, looking at the social enterprise sector itself. So over 5 years of certifying social enterprises, we've now got some really deep and rich data on the composition of the sector itself and just how much impact it creates and why we're so excited about it. So there's over 30 data points we collect through certification. And over that time, we've certified 460 social enterprises. And we know that they create 26,000 jobs, employ 26,000 people. And collectively, their revenue is $1.6 billion. And what's really interesting within that as well is 1.2 billion of that is from trade revenue. So it's business that's operating as a business that's generating its own trade revenue in order to then invest back in the impact that it's creating, which is really great to see. And on the next slide, we can see the impact that they're creating. So there's 3 ways that social enterprises create impact as we categorise it at Social Traders. The first is through employment and training, creating impact in terms of who they employ and employing disadvantaged and marginalised groups. Then there's the community need model, which is about the more accessible and affordable community services. And then there's the profit redistribution model, which is about donating profits to charitable causes. And so there's the median impact expenses you can see there, but collectively, there's over $500 million invested from our certified social enterprises into impact, into generating impact through their social enterprise. That's 28% of their turnover. So unlike traditional business, what we see with social enterprises is that there's nearly 1/3 of it is actually about investing in creating the impact itself, which is what makes the social enterprise model so exciting. And on the next slide, just shows a bit about what's possible and directionally where social procurement is heading. Social Traders has a 10-year vision, our Vision 2030, or 8-year vision now as we're heading into, as the time's ticking on, to unlock $5.5 billion in demand for social enterprises by 2030 across the country. And we know this trend is continuing to tick up and more people are getting involved through things like the State of Social Procurement Survey from 2021, which showed that even back then, a year ago, 86% of businesses agreed that social procurement was going to grow because governments and customers are going to continue to expect it. So the policy drivers are really important, but also that customers are going to be expecting business to do more and to behave in more responsible ways. And as an example of what's possible, that last stat there is from John Holland. They were our biggest spender last year, and they invested $12.7 million in social enterprise, spent that much with social enterprise, which is a great number on its own. But what's even more exciting about it is that that was spent across 57 different certified social enterprises. So it just shows the kind of breadth and depth that's possible when you start to do this work over time. So speaking of that, I'm going to hand over to Beck now, who's going to talk to us a bit more about what's happening within the membership.
Excellent. Thanks, Tara, and good afternoon or morning to everybody, wherever you're joining from. So as Tara said, I'm the head of social procurement services, which means that if you are a business and government member with Social Traders or a certified social enterprise, the team of social procurement advisors sits with me, and we help you on your social procurement journey. And so we just wanted to share a few things that we've seen over the last few years, and then in particular this year. So Tara mentioned the pivot of Social Traders in 2018 to focus on social procurement. That was also based on a pilot program that was started in 2015 to test the social procurement market and appetite for it. And in that year, Social Traders had some founding business members who, I think it's really interesting to note, weren't driven by government frameworks or mandates to do social procurement. Those members were Australia Post, Mirvac, Lendlease, and Westpac. And another great message of that is we are working, continuing to work with those organisations still this year. So they are continuing to work with us year on year, looking at how they can further embed social enterprises, further engage their people, and really grow the impact that they're generating through their procurement spend. We also then started to look at certification of social enterprises in 2015, 2016. And I started working with social enterprises in certification in 2017. And it was, we were really trying to advocate for the relevance of certification then. So why I'm talking about that is actually during 2020, when the pandemic came across us, Social Traders saw, and you can see from the growth that the slides that Tara was sharing, we actually saw more social enterprises coming to us looking for that verification, that certification, the authenticity that Social Traders could provide, and also recognising that they were seeing that shift in the market from business and government organisations, that they were looking for value, like, you know, considering their spend, what value are they going to get with it? What's the impact that's going to occur with their procurement spend? So we were really pleased to see our market continue to grow during those years, and organisations continuing to work with us year in and year out. So a couple of things that we know that we see of the social procurement market maturing is, while we have some members who are joining us because they are being driven by client requests or government frameworks or mandates to do social procurement, we're increasingly seeing more businesses coming to us recognising that demonstrating good and demonstrating social or environmental cultural good within their business is actually being seen as being core to business, and also that it's demonstrating that purpose and showing that will actually help your business be competitive and win work. So we'll touch on our model for a moment, and Tara did talk about this, about the amount of training and engagement that we do with our members. When we understand what our business and government members are looking for, when we understand what our certified social enterprises are selling or areas they're looking to go into, then we can really make some relevant, fantastic introductions to enable more of that social procurement spend. And, you know, cutting through sales time is one of the benefits that we can do with that by understanding all of our market. And the way that we do that is through lots of contact. So, you know, when we were talking about today, we're celebrating our national trailblazers, but also celebrating the time that we spend with our members. Because when we have that information, we can do a lot with it, and that's part of our job, really. So, if you are if you're a business member or a certified social enterprise who's on the call today and not sure if you're having enough time with us, get in touch with me. We will make sure that you will get time. And if you're not a member and you think it's worthwhile joining, get in touch with us as well, and we'll connect you into the right people. But we are here. Oh, sorry, that was a long lead in to some of the things that we're seeing. But in the years that we've been running the awards, this year was actually a year we saw the most applications or submissions across Australia, almost all across Australia. I think Tasmania, we're looking to get some growth happening next year. But over 100 submissions that tell a really, really interesting, exciting story about the innovative work that social enterprises do in our communities, addressing wicked problems through trade, and the business and government organisations that are increasingly working with them to increase that impact. So over 100 applications. We can't talk about them all here, but I did want to highlight our regional finalists before leading into the interview with our national trailblazers. So it was a hard time shortlisting. We did it by area. So we had our states being Victoria and Tasmania. And so I will just note that the criteria for this was demonstrating social enterprise partnerships. We looked at innovation, looked at internal change, and looked at the social and or environmental outcomes that were occurring through that procurement. So the finalists for Victoria and Tasmania were Transurban and Ability Works. And so they have a really fantastic long-term partnership that looks at how impact and logistics can combine to create meaningful outcomes. So that's employment for people living with disabilities. They've been working together for well over 10 years, looking at mailroom and logistics services. Through that work and through partnerships and through field volunteering, as well as buying more from social enterprise from Ability Works, they've been able to create 7 new full-time jobs supporting Ability Works to enable people living with disabilities to build their experience and to thrive and move into the mainstream workforce. In South Australia and in Western Australia, the regional finalists were Community Concierge and Jones Lang LaSalle, or JLL. And so they were awarded finalists for unlocking the inclusive employment through their partnership. So since 2018, Community Concierge had collaborated with JLL to deliver tailored, professional and cost-effective concierge services and fostering community integration by bringing people living with disabilities into the mainstream workforce. So really powerful message there, and that shared value partnership continues to expand beyond the JLL portfolio. Queensland and Northern Territory, our finalists there were the Australian Spatial Analytics and Ventia. And so this partnership is a collaboration that's resulted in 10 of the ASA spatial analysts to be working in with Ventia in telecommunications across Queensland. So by amplifying the Australian economy, so there's a lot of onshoring of jobs, which previously was offshored. So amplifying the Australian economy and diversifying the employment. ASA's young neurodiverse employees really were able to demonstrate their exceptional abilities to work alongside Ventia designers and engineers on critical projects, turning that big data into actionable insights. So a lot of key messages there about inclusive employment and the great role that can play in social enterprises and mainstream businesses. But to talk to and introduce our national trailblazers, I'm going to hand back to Tara.
So you might have noticed by process of elimination that our national winners were our New South Wales and ACT region, which was Too Good Co and Charter Hall. So we celebrated these guys at the Social Enterprise World Forum just recently, but we have them on the call with us now. So we have Rob from Too Good Co. He's the founder there. Hi, hello. Rob. Yeah.
Hello, hello.
And we have Ashley, who's the Sustainability Manager at Charter Hall.
Hi.
So we're going to have a Q&A session with these guys now to tell us a bit more about what their partnership was about, how it worked, and what tips and insights that you can take away from that to look at your own social procurement work. And we're going to encourage all of you to ask questions through this too. So start to think about what kind of things would you like to ask these guys, put them on the spot, or to ask me or Beck as well, and insights that you might like to share too about your own social procurement work that you think the group could benefit from. But just to kick us off first, we're just going to show a quick video which gives a bit of a flavour of what this partnership was all about, and then we'll jump into some questions.
I started as a buy one, give one business. We would sell a meal to someone in the city and use the profits of that meal to donate a meal to a women's shelter. We're a social enterprise that exists to change the course of lives of vulnerable women.
In 2021, we started to look at the tender for our soap. For us, it's a nationwide tender. They were shortlisted and successful in getting the tender.
Profits that we use from all the soap that goes to the buildings goes towards the 60 women that we'll be employing. It's taken us 2 years to get to this stage, manufacturing the dispenser out of fishing line, and the dispensers getting successfully installed through Charter Hall buildings across the country.
They're proving that we can actually make the world a better place.
Brilliant. So to kick us off, I'm going to ask you a question, Ashley, first up, to tell us a little bit about this partnership, what makes it unique, and importantly, what did you have to do differently to make this opportunity work?
Thank you, Tara. Look, I think what is really unique about this particular partnership is how it's evolved over time and the level of employee engagement we've had within Charter Hall for Too Good. We've worked with Too Good over a number of years in varying capacities. We have worked with them to raise awareness of the issue of domestic violence. We have a large retail portfolio, for example, so we've run awareness raising campaigns across our shopping centres. A couple of years ago, we had a great campaign where we had giant puzzles arrayed across about 20 or 30 shopping centres, and members of the public had to walk up and put a piece of the puzzle to kind of represent that process of, victims rebuilding their lives piece by piece. So we've worked with awareness raising with initiatives like that. We've also done a lot of volunteering with Too Good in various different capacities. And so, I think the fact that we had this long established relationship, that to move to a relationship with Too Good into our supply chain just seemed a very good and natural extension of this partnership. But I think one of the key challenges of this, obviously, was that this particular very innovative program required quite significant investment in R&D, and that type of investment can be very difficult for any type of, small to medium social enterprise to actually absorb that investment. So I think the beauty of this particular relationship is because we'd worked together over the years, that we were able to commit to the procurement of quite a significant number of these actual items ahead of time, and that actually just helped with Too Good's establishment of their manufacturing processes. And I don't think we would have been able to necessarily commit to that unless we'd worked together and had that really good trusting relationship that was built over time.
Great, thanks, Ashley. Beck is going to ask a few questions as well.
Yes, sorry, I was just finding the mute button. Entertainingly, we still have to look for it. Rob, I really love this relationship. I love what you've been able to do, with this relationship with Charter Hall. But I know you started with barbecues, leading to catering, leading to soap products, leading to a dispenser. So it'd be great to hear from you about that. that journey and how you decide on what you're going to move into in order to still, you know, generate a sustainable business as well as deliver the impact that Chick delivers.
Yeah, good question. I think so. We've certainly done a lot, and actually last year we said, let's focus. We're probably doing it, but probably doing a bit too much. But the journey really is for us. Obviously, we started off in food, and so the product selection there was quite easy. But the amount of impacts, like the reason we all do this is for the social impact, right? And so we kind of were finding that the business of the catering wasn't really working, just because we were trying to donate food, we were trying to employ vulnerable people and achieve the numbers in order which we want to do it authentically. And so then we decided, well, how do we actually raise revenue? Or how do we have a line of other business that we could generate revenue that could drive into the programs? And that was really the idea behind the soap product. Well, actually, the reason why we committed heavily in the soap product, we come up with new products based on two things. We kind of say, how do we have more social impact with the least impact on the earth? That's the kind of framework we look at for products. And similarly, we ask around to the women's shelters where there is need, and how do we kind of create a product to help to meet that need. But yeah, it's really done with the lens now of how do we generate revenue. We know our impact is great and greater through the kitchen and concierge programs. So trying to use the other products more as a revenue generation that drives funds into the food products, but certainly with that, always going back to that lens of, you know, the most social impact with the least impact on the earth. And I think that's what was exciting with the dispenser itself. Was one of the challenges of growing a soap business is we're essentially creating, you know, potentially another problem by procuring essentially this soap, which is packaged in plastic, and then distributing it to the buildings. And so certainly there's big targets for us to grow that side of the business, but I really didn't want to grow that and create other issues down the track with too much plastic consumption. So the idea was actually, how do we have a net negative effect and try to pull plastic out of the ocean, which we can then use as a dispenser. And then the future innovation, looking at like, how do we go further? Like there is still some plastic in our supply chain of the supply of soaps. So how do we kind of, you know, innovate further and to remove that altogether?
Yeah, big challenge. Yeah, just all the things at once. Yeah. I'm going to ask the room, if you'd like to ask a question, just pop your hand up and we'll ask you to come off mute and share that with everyone. And also, if you prefer not to do that and you'd like to ask a question in the chat, please pop it in there and we'll read that out. And while people are thinking about that, putting hands up, popping questions in the chat, Ashley or Rob, it might be useful to give everyone just a bit of a sense of the scale of this project and some of the numbers as to what you've been able to create in the product itself and the impact as well, because those are pretty impressive.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm happy to, Ash, if you want me to talk to the numbers. Yeah. So the number of, so each dispenser is roughly 0.5 kilo of plastic. And so there, you know, there is the plastic that we use is called Aculon repurpose. It's basically a fishing line, a ghost gear. So the Charter Hall order essentially, and as Ashley mentioned earlier, was a pre-order, which enabled us to pre-purchase the molds and get the molds made. And that was for, you know, at this stage, 2,500 dispensers themselves. And so, you know, times that by 0.5, that's the amount of plastic we've been able to pull out just from the order itself. But the big thing for us is really the kind of ongoing annual supply of soap that's got to fill up for these dispensers. And I think that's the ongoing revenue that we are continuing to grow. As I love reading the paper and seeing Charter Hall purchase another building. So it kind of, all right, put that into sums and doing some more soap production. So I think the contract values over almost $500,000, about $500,000 in contract value for the soaps and for the dispensers alone, and then certainly the ongoing supply of soap, which is important. And really, so we are trying to grow our impact, increase the number of the women that we're putting in the program each year. The target, I think this year we're going to sign off with 38 women through our 2 sites, and the target is to get to 60. But we don't want to have to continue, to fundraise or do that. We want to get through. We want to work with women through paying for it ourselves as a social enterprise, and so this is kind of clearly a way to do that.
Yeah, great. And I can't see any hands up in the chat or questions at this point, but encourage you to pop those in. But for Ashley, I've got another question for you around the internal process of engaging your team with this, because often it's a bit of a change management piece within the business to get people to understand, engage, and then actually implement some of the social procurement activity. Can you talk a little bit about what was needed to make that happen?
Yeah, and look, I think in a way this is a really great example of change management and that kind of all the things you need to have in place in order to then leverage a program like this to be successful, because we had just a number of those kind of stepping stones in place. The first one I spoke about earlier was just that level of awareness and internal engagement. It was a really great platform from which to start, that we had an employee base and an executive that were really proud of our partnership with Too Good, really aware of it. We've been celebrating wins. And so that kind of that really helped with that internal engagement and decision making. But the other thing that really helps is always KPIs and targets, of course. And we've actually had, in terms of our kind of broad social sustainability or social focus areas, we've had a focus for a number of years on employment. And particularly, we really focus on this to a kind of heightened degree during the COVID pandemic, looking at different groups in Australia that were really impacted, and so we really narrowed our focus on employment for vulnerable Australians, and with a particular focus on vulnerable youth as well. But domestic violence really kind of fits, and our partnership with Too Good really fit under that focus of employment for vulnerable Australians and creating that sustainability through employment. So we'd had a focus area, and there's a lot of awareness of our focus on employment for vulnerable Australians, and we'd set a target around that as well. And it was a kind of that target had been endorsed right up through to the executive and board level, and there was an external awareness of that target, and that's to create at least 100 employment outcomes for vulnerable Australians a year. And obviously, and that's through our partnership with social procurement, social enterprises. So thankfully in FY22, we surpassed that target. We almost doubled it and almost generated 200 employment outcomes through our partnerships with social enterprises, which is wonderful. But in terms of helping to really make decisions and to engage with social enterprises in this way, that target, very much help us make that decision. And look, the final thing I'd say, which we all know from a change management perspective, is the importance of having champions for change, and particularly senior champions for change. And we were lucky enough to have our Chief Experience Officer, Natalie Devlin, be a champion for our partnership with Too Good in this particular program. And Natalie and Rob have worked closely over the years to really brainstorm and look for innovative ways to enhance the social impact we can have through this partnership. And this is just one of the many ideas that came out of that innovative thinking. And obviously having that senior champion for change just can really help drive decision making throughout the organisation.
Yeah, such a great point, and why this is such a great example as well. Eloise, you've got your hand up for a question. Jump in.
Hey, thank you. I have a question, I guess, for Rob. Obviously, manufacturing is an expensive task. I'm curious to know how you kind of set yourself up to go for that tender in the first place, and if you sort out that capital for the manufacturing in the process, or you had other supports to, I guess, set you up for that beforehand.
So just to clarify, so you mean with the dispenser or soap in general?
With the dispenser.
Yeah, cool. No, so the dispenser was how to solve a problem. So basically, we had won the contract. So we Charter Hall went to tender and had a tender for the soap supply. We won that soap supply. And then as we started to roll out to look at how might we approach these buildings, a number of the buildings already had existing units. In order for, and the soap suppliers are very smart, in order for us to get that building, we needed our own soap dispenser. So some of them are the Nespresso machines, right? So they give you the dispenser for free, but you got to keep going back and buying their pods, which is also not very sustainable because they're like these little plastic pods. So then we thought, well, we're going to have our own dispenser in order for us to take, because it was about 40% of the portfolio that had their own dispensers. And then it was like, okay, like we could buy our own and just kind of, buy them off the shelf and put them on. But I pitched to say, well, actually, why don't we make our own and why not make them out of ocean plastic? And I think, as Ashley said before, imagine pitching that cold to someone, to a social enterprise who's never made a soap dispenser before, but because there was that trust there, the question was, actually, that sounds like a really good idea. And then we used a great like an industrial designer locally. We kind of went through those processes to make sure it was as sound and put together a business case for this. But it was really us. This is an opportunity to solve a problem that then was able to also meet other targets that Charter Hall had around the environmental sustainability. So it kind of was able to tick a few boxes. It was a little bit crazy at the time, like but it was kind of because there was trust there. Then I was like, okay, this is really good. And then we went through we stepped it out and kind of worked out how much it's going to cost. And then how much, we could charge these at a retail downstream, and then having that relationship, Charter Hall bought into it at the front end. Pleasure.
It's
Yeah,
so interesting.
It was a great, because like there's so many things that were wrong, right? So originally it was a manual dispenser. So we kind of had this we prototyped the manual dispenser in one of Charter Hall's buildings. The other thing is, something that's really important to me is that our products have a premium nature to it, and not to be like ego or anything. It's literally because a lot of the stuff that we do, we want to demonstrate love and respect to the woman in the shelter, and it's really important that we give something really beautiful there and not kind of something that someone else doesn't want. And so that kind of theme comes through all of our products. So it was important that this dispenser could stand up in a premium asset. And so, and the opportunity was, let's design something that we think looks really beautiful, and went to and that was formed part of the brief to the industrial designer to create something really beautiful. But we started off with a manual, then COVID happened, and then so we obviously had to go to a touchless one, which is also quite of a challenge. But again, that relationship kind of got us through to say, we believe in this, let's keep going.
And if I could just jump in there as well, I think, one of the things that really helped get this particular project across the line is, to me, it kind of delivered on three fronts. It was almost like the triple whammy. It just kind of helped. It just sold itself in a sense, because first of all, our investors are interested in, performance efficiencies and cost of operations. And, and that was obviously, a tick that obviously the product is very kind of reliable and delivers those performance efficiencies. But then at the same time, people are interested in environmental outcomes. And so this one has a very strong environmental outcome, but also a really strong social outcome. So it's so nice that this was an initiative that an organisation is willing to invest in, because it was delivered across those three lines, which is fairly unique.
And and then one of the great things about being some great, often not great. So it's like money's not the driver for us. Certainly we need to grow revenue and we need to be profitable. But what's exciting for me is it opens up these other avenues of being able to do things. Like it would have been much cheaper for us to be able to go and quicker to market. We would have been selling soap all through those buildings by now if we went to market and kind of just got an off-the-shelf dispenser. But we have this great opportunity, social enterprise in general, I'm saying, to really kind of go hard and pitch really high, because we can, so like the drivers for us is not revenue creation, it's more impact and less impact on the earth. And I think that's what excites me about coming up with a different lens on a way on solving problems, and being okay with doing something that might be a bit more expensive as far as, because often being sustainable can actually be a bit more expensive. But having the confidence to do that, because we need to not go crazy, but the price point for us or the profit margins for us doesn't need to be what it would be for a regular business. We need to get better at that, because sometimes we give way too much, or sometimes we kind of have too much impact and kind of go backwards. But certainly it's a good lens to look through.
It's fantastic. I love listening to you both, Ashley and Rob, talk about this, because and you're also hitting on so many key themes that I think we see through the work we're doing with members. Like Ashley, you were talking about that internal engagement and celebrating wins and getting that internal buy-in, but also having that backup of targets and KPIs that actually is going to drive people's behavior change and and lead to better outcomes. And I'm interested in both of you thinking about this, what you might have learned through this or seen successes, and then what might you change or do differently for the next one? Like Rob, when you were looking for another partnership, and Ashley, when you're trying to get some more internal buy-in for the next great, fantastic relationship. But what's a key lesson that you have learned through this?
Look, I'll jump in, and mine's fairly consistent, I think, with what I was saying before. It's just about the celebration of wins. Like, always celebrate small wins. I think it's really daunting to try and scale the use of social enterprises across an organisation. Particularly for very large, complex organisations with complex supply chains or international supply chains. I think often a lot of organisations get a bit stunted because you don't know where to start. And it can be sometimes more time consuming to work with a number of smaller social enterprises than kind of one big corporate that can deliver, in massive, different geographical locations. So I think sometimes it can be really daunting to think about, okay, well, how do I get started and how do we scale? But I think, my key lesson for this particular project, we're just working with social enterprise in general, is to just get started. Start small. Just choose one or two or a number of different product or service lines. Choose a couple of really, partners that you potentially worked with before, and pilot programs. And I think through that kind of piloting and celebrating wins and creating awareness, I think opportunities to scale will be easier than trying to start big.
Yeah. You're all giving me far too many quotes. I do storytelling all the time with our members, and just get started. Such a fantastic, clear message. Rob, something you'll
and mine too. Like I think for us, it's kind of replicating as opposed to scaling. So certainly, like, this is something that we've learned from and want to do more of. So I think there's more steps in the innovation journey on this project for us, which will continue. And the importance of, so I am really lucky to have that relationship, which we kind of built with a senior person at Charter Hall. But I think where I can also do better is kind of build that relationship down. It takes time, but it's really worthwhile is continuing to invest in relationships throughout the organisation, and kind of and building relationships throughout the team as well is something that we'll continue to do. And then looking at kind of then taking the business case and what we did that to look at other areas within Charter Hall, but also other areas within other organisations to say, we're able to do this. This is some of the outcomes. This is some of the learnings that we had, and let's do it again with your organisation. Yeah.
And I have a follow-up question with that, Rob. And the relationships are so critical. We see that all the time. You're a founder, CEO. Like, how much of that is your week that you find you're looking out for relationships, building them, growing them, looking for new ones?
So this year Too Good's growing quite well, and I've actually struggled this year to work out just being honest, work out what my role is in the organisation, because we're now, I was doing everything, I'm doing less, and all of a sudden we've got a great leadership team. Whenever I get involved, things go haywire. But like, it's for me, it's really about learning more about leadership and how do I be a better leader, and how do I have more authenticity to the team, and kind of look at growing the team. And it's quite a luxurious place to be in, and to be able to focus on trying to be a better leader. And that also means, a better communicator of our story, and how do we, because, we do quite well B2B, because we tell that story. We've spent a lot of time in that storytelling with our partners. And a lot of that is me. I would easily spend, half of my week with partners, talking about our story and what we're doing and where, and more importantly, where we want to go to bring them along for that journey. But also, I think I need to spend just as much time, maybe not more than the other half, but so certainly just a lot of time with the team and kind of getting them more engaged and kind of in growing up through our organisation. And one thing we haven't cracked, we haven't done well at, I don't think, is our direct to consumer. We've got a good, strong B2B business, but how do we kind of then start to tell better stories to the people who are buying through our website, to the consumer, or the people who are actually in the bathroom washing their hands to see what's going on there. And so I think that's kind of a bit of a focus on what we want to do going forward, is how do we get better at kind of packaging up our stories and giving them to our partners who might be a B2B, but they're also just as important, the person who's purchasing through our website. So trying to kind of balance all of that.
Speaking of that storytelling piece and building that understanding of social enterprise and how it works, I'm interested, Ashley, in your perspectives on whether your perceptions or your team's perceptions of social enterprise changed through the process of working with Too Good or engaging with social enterprises. So often we see, some businesses that work with Aboriginal businesses, for example, in their supply chains, and we're having conversations to say, that's fantastic, we love that. Also, there are social enterprises as well that you can look to work with, but often social enterprises aren't known or a bit misunderstood. Did you find that at the beginning, and how did you work through that? Just need to jump off mute, Ashley.
Always happens. Sorry. Look, I think. I'm sure it has. I think there was always a strong awareness that this was an opportunity with Too Good. Like, I don't think there was ever, a question is, should we or shouldn't we be doing this with, social enterprises. I think there was some excitement about doing it, and I think at the same time we've also got four other employment social enterprises that we kind of have state-based social enterprises that kind of support employment for vulnerable youth. So we work with groups like White Box in Queensland, Dismantle in WA, Green Collect in Victoria, and Kickstart Cafes in New South Wales. So we do a lot of storytelling across all of those. And I'd say we've definitely been working with Too Good for longer. So that's probably our most well-known partnership. But I think because we've got quite a bit of storytelling happening throughout the organisation, that I think we're getting there in terms of kind of normalising or embedding the use of social procurements in our supply chain. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've got a long way to go, but I do get people in the business, like there's social procurement happening through in the business sometimes, and I don't even know about it. Like I get sometimes like reports from some of our partners like Dismantle, and they give me a bit of a summary of how many people per quarter that we've employed through engaging their services, and they'll send me a list of the different services they've provided to Charter Hall, and I'm certainly not involved or driving that, which is really nice that that's kind of happening. Things like that have got their own momentum now, which is really great. And in terms of I kind of work in our Charter Hall group ESG team, and so I do a lot of work with Rob and his team in kind of coming up with ideas and establishing partnerships and opportunities. But it's so nice to see that, Rob's very embedded in our office business, and he works really closely with a number of different stakeholders in our office business. So I think we're really getting there in terms of embedding these kind of suppliers in throughout our business. And the other thing that's really nice is I quite often get emails of, we've got an opportunity. Do you have any idea of who I could use? If there is any like First Nations or social procurement organisations that I could use. And so I kind of get online and, both to Supply Nation and social traders and look for opportunities to meet the demand. So I think through these partnerships, there's an awareness and then people are interested.
And just to jump on that as well, storytelling is core for our products are really good. But I'm no illusion, like people come to us because of the story, and how do we articulate that story and distribute it in a way that's meaningful and at the right time. And so it's like for us, storytelling is how you build partnerships, how you build, and being able to articulate your story and present it in a way in which your partner wants to share it. And I think we started to invest more in our content creation. And I think that's certainly been a key focus and a key fundamental to success is being able to articulate the story. I mean, the video that you showed before, the longer version is was something that we chose to invest in because it actually really articulates the story, and it's done in a beautiful way. And I think that's certainly a key focus for ours, and a recommendation on anyone who's kind of wanting to tell more stories is trying to invest in a good storytelling brand, or someone who can help you better articulate that message.
Great point, for sure. And it's a challenge for the whole social enterprise sector, I think, to do that. As one, which we've started to work a bit more on, is how do we have a consistent voice about why social enterprise is so exciting. So just a final question for each of you from Beck and I, to wrap it up as sort of some words of advice for the room. To Ashley first, thinking of other businesses that might be with us today, what's your advice for them in terms of where can we take this, what's next, and what are some of the first steps if you're just kicking off with this?
Yeah, I think our role as corporates is just to normalise the use of social enterprises in our supply chain. I think there's definitely a role for government enabling social procurement, or payment by outcome type of solutions. But I think our role as corporates just to continue to raise awareness, promote the benefits and the power of social enterprise, and make it almost kind of a mainstream and just part of the supply chain decision making.
And also from the social enterprise side, in my view, it's starting small and spend time on working out who you want to partner with. All the organisations, like Ashley said, have their own pillars of where they want to develop and grow within their own organisation. So working out which organisation might have a similar desire for a pillar that you might help them solve, and then start small and go hard.
Great closer. Start small and go hard. Love it. Just want to say thank you to both of you for your time today, and just your generosity in sharing your stories, your insights, your what worked along the way, and things you do differently next time. It's really helpful for all of us to hear that, hear where it works, and be inspired by it. So I hope for everyone here, it's left you with a few things to think about, to take away some practical tips and ideas, and a bit of a sense of what's possible when we do this work, and that it is possible. All of you here, you're the ones that are proving every day that doing good and doing business are not mutually exclusive. It is absolutely possible to use business to generate purpose beyond profit. You just heard fantastic examples of doing that from two different perspectives through social procurement. And what we know at Social Traders is social procurement is really maturing as an industry, as a sector now. It's working. We're seeing the outcomes. We're seeing the growth. It's catching on right around the world as well, not just in Australia, but everywhere. And all of you involved in this, you really are trailblazers. You are pioneers. This is kind of a front wave of a new way to do business that's rethinking the procurement function from a completely different perspective. So just a thank you and a congratulations to everyone who's involved in this space and taking some steps on this journey. And for those in the room that aren't yet members of Social Traders or are not yet certified social enterprises, we encourage you to come and talk to us, join the community, be part of it, because it's a really exciting place to be. So I'll leave you with that thought. Thanks to everyone for joining us. And yeah, we hope to be in touch with you all soon in various ways. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Ashley.